Well, we will find out. It looks like we won't have to wait much longer. They have gone straight in here, no messing around. Tailbot has started on blue coin with his gift list.
Tailbot on blue with his gift. Now, I know a lot of people try to snipe this list on red, but on blue it is obviously quite nice as you get to boost Dunka with that stratagem, making her a little bit less easy to remove. He also has Philavandrel in hand, which a lot of players aren't talented to draw in round 1, of course, because you want that card to get as many hand buffs as possible so that it can draw you a nice 8 provision Isengrim's Council, even a 10 provision Call of the Forest.
Yeah, most definitely. An interesting pick from AKELA here has decided to take Inspired Zeal on red coin. We have seen it on blue coin both times previously. Obviously, he is going into the series on red, but Inspired Zeal often wants to protect those students, which he has drawn a lot of, I can see, and using the stratagem pairing can often help that. So it'll be interesting to see if this lineup pays off for AKELA here.
Yes, and both hands look quite nice. AKELA having a few strong cards in his round 1 hand, perhaps not already wanting cards like Shani or Gerard. He does not, in fact, have Rafar's Vengeance, a card that could definitely help him tempo up on even here round 1. But Tailbot taking his time to decide what he wants to play. I mean, normally we do see something like Dunka coming down. He might first decide to bait it out with something else, but he does go with Dunka, and he does not boost Dunka. Is it even necessary to boost Dunka in this list?
I think he's looking at it and he knows there is no 5p removal available to AKELA. So if he chooses to use that stratagem here, he is effectively just giving more value to a potential dual card if Selkirk exists in hand. Obviously, he doesn't know that it does, we do. So I actually quite like the hold there from Tailbot.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, if AKELA wants to remove this card immediately, he'd have to commit something like Selkirk, and already Selkirk will find about the same amount of value here, whether Dunka is boosted or not. Tailbot holding back a few points with the stratagem, might be playing it on something else entirely, but I must say I like that Guardian coming down there, providing an extra 2 points of damage as well as more symbiosis in a list that greatly favors it. It's a nice inclusion we don't often see in these lists.
It is, and right now I can see the possibility of removing both of these in one foul swoop. He can use both orders and then use a rebuke to clear both of these up. The alumni list we've seen is very, very powerful, but it does require these students to survive to build the value of the alumni. If they don't stick, then it's no good. Instead, Tailbot has decided he's not worried about that. He is just going to keep playing his engines and stay ahead for now. They are not a big enough threat for him to want to deal with yet.
Yes, it seems both players are just placing threats on the board without fear of removal, which is an interesting strategy. We're going for an alternative route entirely. Who can outpoint the other player with pure engines on the board? Each player right now having to decide when they want to remove some of these engines. Tailbot being in the better spot here. He can just play a Nature's Rebuke, committing next to nothing and getting rid of some of those mages. He can also just decide not to do that at all and start building more of his engines, but it does appear like he is going for the former, and he is going to remove one of the engines with a Circle of Life, getting some nice carryover there on Philavandrel.
Yeah, starts building up that Philavandrel boost. Ideally, wouldn't really want Gord in this round. While it is picking up some hand buffs, he wants to be able to play all the way down here if he needs to, so that is a little bit awkward for him, but he will hope he will find a way out of this without worrying. A Meditating Mage on the other side, though, with one in hand from the Mushy Truffle. That threat from AKELA that he's not too far behind as it may look, and the Patience engines just continue to tick here.
Yes, those Meditating Mages, I have not yet recovered from that meta, I must admit. Well, to be fair, AKELA does need 2 of them on the board for them to get a resistance, and it will be interesting to see. No, that's not allowed. Dunka gives a ping, and gone is the Meditating Mage. Already an impossibility to get resistance here, unless committing something like Chapter of Wizards.
Yeah, it makes sense here, and the additional threat from Tailbot in this list, those damage order abilities. Dunka is one that's there, not the main reason she's included in lists, but that little bit of extra removal paired with the Dwancanel Guardian is really nice for Tailbot. He is in a commanding position right now in terms of points. He will be pretty happy knowing the carryover is unlikely to be a threat here, albeit AKELA does state that maybe, just maybe, he thinks he has a way to deal with it, dropping the other one. Risky though, he is a lot of points down here. And the Meditating Mage on its own, not necessarily going to catch up. A chance now for Tailbot to consider, does he keep going here, or does he believe 24 points in a card is doable?
That is quite a risky bluff from AKELA's side. He could catch up with a lot of commitment. Tailbot probably doing the calculations himself here. He's in an exceptional position to just keep on playing nature cards, getting that symbiosis on the board with some treants. He is definitely calculating whether AKELA has bluffed accordingly, or whether Tailbot still needs to commit a card or two here in order to get out of the round.
Yeah, I mean, it's very doable with the Patient Student. It is a possibility to pair that up. There is a tall enough unit that the duel may also find some decent value. Instead, he decides, I want this round. Commits 4 Provision Bronze, nice enough, also gives you a different option available from the Forest Protector if he wants to go down that line later, although it's doubtful. And now AKELA just has to say, okay, thank you, I'll see you later. And the Bannard Student is going to go out at 5 Patience, so only one of the 2 triggers for Alumni has so far been met, because the other student was killed at, I believe, 2 boost.
Yes, and of course, while playing Inspired Zeal, you don't actually need Zeal on the Alumni, though it is ideal. You'd rather use that on a well-placed Selkirk, or even, well, there's a lot of options really to use it on at this point. The question in everybody's minds is whether Tailbot will go into a long round here, or whether he's going to bleed out all of those pesky Alumni and mages, so they can't build up patience. Tailbot's in an exceptional position here to do that, and that's exactly what we see. He commits a bronze card to start off with, a nice Guardian that puts extra symbiosis on the board, also a tiny bit of a threat with that 2-point ping and perhaps another Circle of Life on a mage. AKELA now needs to decide how he's going to go into this round. He has a lot of strong cards, and they can be bled out. Hopefully Tailbot doesn't get sniff of this, or else he's going to go very deep into this round.
Yeah, quite possibly. The risk of bleeding into this is you give him the chance to set the Alumni up, but if you don't, you give him a whole long round. Now, this Sinless here is a little bit awkward right now, because if I'm not mistaken, the only duplicate left for Tailbot is Tempering, and he may just think to himself, having access to another damage card, even though it's only a single draw, is actually worth it. Obviously, he has both options in hand right now, so I mean, it's a very strong looking hand on paper if he decides perhaps just to push and go for this here.
Oh wow, interesting play. That's rather committing a bit, isn't it? That's not just the leader charge, it's an Alumni, which is very valuable in this game.
It is indeed, although an Alumni in this round is just a Shani or even a Necromancy, as you can see in hand target, in the next. So it's almost carryover to play that card, which is absolutely insane. And moving that card feels valuable. AKELA saw the risk from the previous round, how easy it was for units to be removed when normally you need them to stay. Again, just drops down onto that, removing the threat. And the talent here, another Sorceress has been found here. Bountiful Harvest doing exactly what Tailbot will be hoping for here.
Yes, that Bountiful Harvest, one of the strongest bronze cards currently in the game, getting you a vast variety of options, and the Sorceress, mostly the best one of those. Now, Tailbot coming down here to some of his best cards. Whether he commits them is going to be interesting to see, and he does do exactly that, gets another 6 Provision Bountiful Harvest by committing Philavandrel. Not bad, though not the best card we would want from that. I expect we'd rather be hoping for another Sorceress at best.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad because he does find damage. So a little surprised maybe not to see a leader charge there onto the Sorceress to put it into range to grab something like a Circle of Life, or even just clicking for the Waylay to remove that student outright straight away.
Yeah, very odd, and we see that Chapter of Wizards coming down there. It provides quite a few options here. It's not horrible. We go for the Burnout Tutor. Not bad, playing for a solid 6 points, boosting the ranged student up to 6 points out of removal range here on Tailbot's end. Now, again, we're in a rather difficult position here. Are we committing? It appears Tailbot really does want to commit more cards here. I think he wants to bleed AKELA of at least a few golds before he goes out of this round.
Yeah, so far AKELA will be reasonably happy with the way this round has gone, because ultimately it has just been value for him so far, and Tailbot as a result takes the tempering, the only option there, which does give him not only some tempo, but also a decent amount of points as he has boosted that up. Finds yet another Bountiful Harvest into a 7-point card. Not the best because he can't remove the student here, but is threatening by pinging it down to 5, using that Forest Protector and going even deeper into this round.
Yes, that is for sure. AKELA now having to decide what he's going to be playing. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like Necromancer coming out there. He still has to use his Mushy Truffle order ability, as that card will not have resilience for much longer and will disappear into round 3. So that's a little bit of commitment AKELA is sitting on there. He also has access to the order ability of Chapter of Wizards, so he can play a duplicate bronze card here if he does decide to go with Necromancy, which is exactly what we see. Question is, what will he pull? Perhaps it's a Barnard student, and there we see the Golden Froth coming out, but he's still not ahead yet. Not ahead.
No. And the tempo is quite important there. Also means that the order ability from Chapter of Wizards is now the Barnard student, not the Barnard tutor, because that would have been rather disappointing at just 2 points rather than an additional engine. Obviously, the ideal target is an alumni, which is what he will be hoping for into the next round. Decent point gap here, and there is now the threat from Tailbot. He has a pass, but do you really, really want a 5-card round against the alumni in the state they are in right now? Does he simply go in here? Does he go for it? He knows he has the option of this Forest Protector into removal, and that is exactly what he does. I think he may be going for it here.
I think you might be right. He gets the death blow on that, gets a Treant boosted to 2 points. We see Shani being dropped in the range row, probably going to go for another one of those ranged students. Now, this is getting very close. Tailbot needs to know whether AKELA's bluffing. Does he actually have access to any cards that can reset Gord? We know he does. He has enough time to actually commit Garrett as well as Southkirk, keep Garrett on the board and get a little bit more patience out of him. Perhaps getting an artifact compression and resetting Gord entirely. Is that worth doing?
The risk.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the risk. If he commits this here, it obviously will be the line that AKELA takes, because he's got, I think it's a 3 in 4 chance of finding that exact option. Now, he still needs to find a good number of points, though. There is an 18-point gap. The student is pretty chunky right now. I believe it's got 6 damage in there, and he's got a lot of points out. And he decides, I'm going to take the pass, hoping, possibly successfully, that he can actually get both cards here. I think he may just fall short of that with the order abilities on board, but let's see.
Yes, AKELA here doing the calculations. He is going to want to make sure that he gets out of this in the same turn. He uses a leader ability on that Southkirk. Southkirk takes out the Sorceress, and AKELA comfortably gets out of the round with Garrett still intact. This is going to be rather close depending on the draws. AKELA still having a charge there, forming some nice carryover on the Chapter of Wizards. That can be particularly scary if he gets some alumni in hand.
It can indeed, and at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, okay, Raffard's Vengeance has been found here, but he does need to find bronze units, which makes the mulligans a little bit awkward, really, because you don't really want the Spellweaver here, but unless he draws into okay, the hand's looking really nice for Tailbot, but the mulligan choices are really awkward here. Decides to get rid of the Spellweaver because it could be good, and finds another. If I'm not mistaken, that means that AKELA has actually missed Amphibious Assault through the entire of this.
That's not great. That is a very nice tutoring card to have. Yeah, that Echo card alone can provide a lot of points in one fell swoop. He does go for Raffard's Vengeance here, which is a nice card to at least get your hands on. And he's going to give that Zeal. Now he has to play a bronze card, likely going to go for that Centurion Spellweaver. Oof, Winch.
And draws into the Winch. Now, the Winch may not actually be... Well, in fact, it's really not helpful, no. Albeit in the next turn he can play it and I believe still get one more attempt. If he holds correctly. I think my math is correct on that. The winch will reduce 3 turns, so he will have one final turn at playing it, meaning he has to basically play Gerhardt second to last. Really awkward here.
Yes, I believe your maths is correct, Lionheart. And Tailbot just going for that Nature's Rebuke off the bat, doesn't even play Ethne yet, missing out on a little bit of Symbiosis charges there. But it does make sense, as the Spellweavers will simply ping away those Dryads, making them rather useless if they are on the board. So we see Gerard there, and the Order ability isn't even being used. That's what's nice about these open deck lists. AKELA knows it is safe. He can hold on to Gerard, and he can use it when he feels it is the correct moment to get the optimal amount of value from him.
Yeah, very, very easy for him there just to hold. We do see Tailbot, knowing the 2 charges are available on the other side, protects those tokens, the symbiosis value there in for him. And we do see that winch come down pretty quickly.
Oh,
that's quite a draw. Okay, that is quite a draw, because the Dwin Leandra not only plays and got Amphibious Assault, but it actually restarts the chapter of Wizards here.
That is beautiful. I don't think that could have gone any better for AKELA. That's a chunky amount of points right there, and honestly it's looking a little bit scary here for Tailbot. I don't think Gord necessarily cuts it here.
I don't know, the Gord is pretty big, remember. It was boosted up to 8 itself already. It will go to 9 when it is tutored. This is going to be pretty close here, I think. It's going to be a little closer than perhaps it looks initially. Because I believe the alumni... Oh, no, the alumni have Zeal. Actually, the alumni may well have Zeal here, so it may not be as close as I think it is, because he is already down by 8 points.
Yeah, no, I think this alumni might just be the end. We're going to see another one pop out as well with the chapter of Wizards. It's not looking great. It's not count our chickens before they have hatched.
And finds potentially a verification as well to go in. Actually played the alumni on the back row rather than playing on the front row and spawning one instead. His option is...
Oh dear.
Alright guys, so we have a small problem with the casters. So game 2, Tailbot taken on Nilfgaard versus AKELA's Skellige. This is going to be an interesting one for sure. I am not your best caster, but I do enjoy the cards here. Looks like a very good hand from AKELA. Tailbot, could have done better. Mushy Truffle going down. And Tailbot is pondering his next move. As you can see, the plays here are not very fast, quite slow. Tailbot grooming the side of his head, thinking what to play. Alright, casters seem to be a-okay, so we will transition from my bad casting slowly to them. So you don't have to listen to me talking about players more than cards. Perfect for the final.
is very true. Now, I think we are coming back loud and clear now. Hopefully all of the sound is back. We see a third
Background
card being
noise.
played.
And you can see here the Melusine Cult is coming down, created a couple of different options set up early here on Tailbot's side. Hopefully the sound issues are now sorted for you guys, and you get my dulcet tones alongside Tia.
I mean, who does not want to hear this British accent? Certainly not me. Now, AKELA here, let's see. So he has the discard package in hand. He has drawn into Melusine. That's something you definitely want to see early on in the game. Of course, he has the option of discarding a few cards, perhaps getting his hands on a defender, as I do believe that Tailbot is actually running Heatwave as well as Yennefer's Invocation in this list. That makes for a lot of tool removal and something we need to look out for.
Yeah, and that will be something that Tailbot will be banking on in this, hopefully being able to grab a pretty sizable Melusine himself if he can find a way to do so. Though he, of course, may have to get through one of those defenders, and it'll be the reason that AKELA is taking his time here.
That is very true, but already we are quite ahead here on AKELA's end. He's already committed the Mushy Truffle. I see he's already committed the Order ability as well, and he passes on 7 coins. The plan is to get out of the round, and that is it. Tailbot not getting a lot of value for a potential Arto Terra Nova, especially with Furcart already committed. That might be a little bit difficult now with only 1 Mage Torturer left for later rounds.
Yeah, could well be with Furcart committed, as you say, but does have some options, and they aren't the worst. Hermit is an engine after all, and it's a brilliant engine when you compare it with Melusine. If he can steal it as Nilfgaard, as far as it's concerned, all cards are our cards in Nilfgaard, and a nice little play there. Uses the first coup, and benefits from the bonded value as well as the Assimilate engine there to take the round in a single card, which he will feel pretty happy with. Now he has that round control, but can he take a long round here, or it seems unlikely, because into that long round it is going to be terrifying how much value Ryogun could potentially play for.
Yes, that's the thing about this list. We really do like a long round with Melusine. The longer the better, and you have to be assured you can 2-0 if that's the case, because a short round Melusine, if left unchecked, is just deadly. And like you said, we do have Ryogun the Undying, so there's no amount of rain on a robe that is too much. It will all tick if we can get Ryogun out of the graveyard.
It will. Oh, nice little pick there. Decides for that final mulligan and does find the Joachim, so we'll have a decent amount of points available to him. Now, for Tailbot, this is a very, very interesting and quite difficult round for him. He needs to work out exactly how to start. He has options here if he's going to go as much engine value as possible. Maybe just taking something like the Brathens here for pure point value is an option, or setting up his own Mushy Truffle and starting to take some of the power from the graveyard on the other side.
Yes, and it appears he is going for that Illusionist. Now, that is a very nice card, especially if you have multiple of them, because that Illusionist might be spawning a 1-point half-rue now, but if you can get another one of those on the board at the same time, it will give you a full point half-rue. Unfortunately, the rain quickly gets rid of the half-rue, assuring that that cannot happen. We cannot have multiple half-rues playing for more than 6 points at least.
No, and the fact that he could have simply just clicked that as well, he would only have lost the 1 point, as you say, but gained the rain. Really nice from AKELA there, and that was a snap, rapid decision from him. He was not playing around there.
Ooh, and now we're going to see one at 6. Yes, now, again, not great here, because if we play another half-rue from the graveyard, it's going to play for 8 points already. This is one of those matchups where Illusionists can carry quite a bit of point slam, and I won't be surprised to see that a Mushy Truffle coming out from Tailbot's end at some point, getting yet another Illusionist on the board, as well as another half-rue.
Yeah, it can be quite a lot of points there. It's actually quite nice for AKELA. A lot of the times you'll see players when they're playing Skellige, they'll draw the discard package in round 1 and they will jam it really quickly. I've been guilty of it myself. But knowing that he's got that into round 2, the amount of tempo that is going to produce, especially when Coral is difficult to remove, is going to feel really nice for him here.
Yes, AKELA definitely not liking that 10-point half-rue. definitely more than all of his halfers, that's for sure. Tailbot having the bigger one right here, and who knows, he might even get some more. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Mushi Truffle coming out at some point, though it will only get him an 8-point halfer, as, yeah, he won't be playing it directly from the graveyard, merely creating another copy.
Indeed, it's going to take all of my energy not to discuss that you said Tailbot has the bigger one. We're going to move swiftly on and continue with this matchup. Tailbot looking here, trying to work out what he does. He is ahead right now, so he does retain his card, but he has got nowhere near enough out yet, I don't think, and will want to take this a little bit further to try and grab as many points as possible. As we say, the risk of the bleed here is that it ends up benefiting AKELA rather than hurting him, and he's actually quite cleverly holding this Melusine. We still see no defender, so it's a little bit awkward for him.
Yes, we do see that Duchess Informant coming out though, and we're going for the Hermit. Not the... Oh, okay, now this is not going to work out the way we intended to for AKELA. That just gets stolen from Tailbot's end. He might even wait a bit because... Well, it wouldn't be wise, but the bigger the Melusine grows, the more points we're going to get by stealing it with Yennefer. And it does damage cards to its left and to its right. Question is whether AKELA has a defender. Tailbot doesn't know whether he has one in hand or not.
No, exactly, and that's the thing. I think the risk is if you just go and take it, you can take nothing else, and that's the problem. He doesn't have the ability to take anything else once that's taken, and while Melusine is a huge threat and something you obviously want to steal, allowing it to grow a little bit isn't the end of the world if you believe there is no defender there. On top of that, you've also, of course, got the risk of Fulmar. Now, Fulmar is really scary once that order ability is clicked. He converts Rain into Storm, which damages everything on the road by 1, where the idea that that could survive is pretty scary. His leader ability, of course, isn't Imprisonment, which may have given him a better shot here, so he has to be very careful when he commits those key removal pieces.
Yes, and we also have Messengers of the Sea, which are playing like old-school greatswords. They have absolutely no ceiling, and every time a card on the other side of the board gets damaged by Rain or Storm, these Messenger of the Seas will boost themselves by 1 point for each card. It's ridiculously strong, and it essentially doubles or even triples the point that comes from Rain or Storm. Now, we see Tailbot stealing the little Messenger of the Sea instead of Melusine. Very interesting play. He does still have access to Heatwave, but perhaps decided he'd rather have Messenger of the Sea himself and get rid of Melusine later on in maybe a short round if there is one.
Yeah, I mean, he's already committed his experimental remedy as well, which is a nice way to perhaps take one out of the graveyard and deny it from being available later. But that Messenger of the Sea it's such a threat. It's basically doubling the value of all Rain on board right now, and it is only going to grow. So he's decided, you know what, I want that. His leader ability will potentially give him the option of stealing a Fulmar as well if he gets lucky. So has decided, Joachim, it is time, plays his own, and now can start playing Rain value himself.
Yeah, Tailbot going for it. It feels like he might be considering the 2-0 at this point. AKELA now left to not a lot of cards in hand. He's going to have to use the rest of his discard package at this point. He does have Coral on board, so it really is an option, providing quite a bit of tempo as well. He has a Skirmisher in hand he can discard. It will pop out onto the board immediately, and he might even draw into some nice cards like that of Fukushia, though it's not necessarily something you want to commit to yet.
No, indeed. I mean, the issue with the random damage of the Rain and indeed of the Coral, Hermits actually want to be damaged because their engine stops working as soon as the damage stops. So the random damage actually avoids it this time, but as soon as that does click, it will effectively turn itself back on potentially. So there is the option that it could end up being a little problematic for Tailbot to keep switching those back on.
Yes, that is very true. Tailbot does have access to Coup de Grace, though it does have Doomed. It's his last chance to play it, and he instead decides he's going to hold on to that card for later, passes with Lydia in hand as well as Coup.
He does, and now just the discard coming out, Soul discard, does basically have to commit the tempo here as well and thin the card. Obviously not going to want to get rid of either Bride there. So makes sense and gets out by just by more than 2 points in the end. All of those engines going crazy with the rain value and the Melusine as well.
Yes, now remember we still have access to Melusine now. AKELA can get it out of Sigdrifa's right with Fukusha or even with Bride of the Sea after Sigdrifa has been played. Now, the question is, has he committed that defender yet or not?
No,
he hasn't. That's dangerous for Tailbot. He already got rid of Yennefer. He now has access to Heatwave, but he can't deal with both of them. Not easily, that is. He also has Arte Terra Nova, but no way to actually get him new cards for Arto unless he gets something with Arturius Vigo, perhaps another Mage Torturer. AKELA in a very good spot here, I must say.
Yeah, AKELA will be reasonably happy here. Just the sheer value of the Melusine alone being able to come back. Not too much in the way of rain being produced here. Fukusha will probably grab one of the smaller value units in order to produce as much rain as possible here. For instance, one of the messengers, or the only remaining messenger rather, is an option. For Tailbot, to be able to find a way through the defender and hasn't drawn his heat wave. So that coup is looking particularly sad in hand right now.
He really does need to get another spying status out onto the board for that to find much value. He goes with a little Hafru once again. Not the worst card, but normally we end up getting a nice Fukusha instead. There's a lot of targets we really want if we're being a Nilfgaard in this matchup. We do see Fukusha coming out there. Very nice. A 12-point Hafru. That's a ridiculous amount of points.
Yeah, that is a not-so-little Hafru there, and he has been building that up for quite a while. Decent amount of carryover, and does jam the Terra Nova down early to try and get as much value as possible here, knowing that realistically it isn't direct removal that is a threat. It is going to be the other issues, albeit the Lydia here could end up allowing him to bring his own messenger back, which could be quite an interesting match. That could be very interesting if we end up seeing that.
I love that Nilfgaard has a little Hafru that's almost twice as big as every little Hafru that AKELA has managed to get so far, even though he's the one playing Skellig. But you know that's how these things go. Nilfgaard just ends up doubling the points you would have gotten and having its own engines while we're at it. But the game's not over yet, so AKELA here having to decide in what order he wants to play this. He has access to Sigdrifa's right or to Fukusha. Fukusha, of course, giving you perhaps a smaller bronze and a lot of rain, or a bigger card and a little bit less rain. It depends what you are going for. But as he has access to Ryagan in the graveyard, a lot of rain won't actually hurt, as most of it will tick. Well, all of it, actually, if he does end up getting Ryagan back from the graveyard.
Yeah, he will be able to produce all of that. And while he is 12 points ahead here right now, Tailbot, there is definitely a long way to go in this one. Right now, just playing the value. He's a bit late for the thinning, but goes for the Artorius Vigo instead and takes another Illusionist here to grab as many points as possible. That's a lot of Assimilate taking place right now.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. He has 2 Assimilate engines on the board ticking currently, and he still has that Lydia that's going to tick them another time, as well as the Golden Froth coming from the Mushy Truffle. AKELA now... having to
he didn't take the Illusionist. He instead took the Blightmaker. I thought he clicked the Illusionist. No, took the Blightmaker for max points instead.
Yeah, he went for the Blightmaker. Sorry, I must have misheard you myself there. But that defender ticking down as well. Ku might actually end up finding a target here if it gets into killing range with the Death Blow ability. Ooh, 16-point Melusine coming out onto the board. Doesn't put us ahead yet, but just wait for Ryagan to make his appearance. There's still a lot that can happen in this small amounts of time.
Yeah, there is a lot of value there. The Melusine carryover, really, really powerful. And the beauty of the Fukusha, of course, the Fukusha does give you the option to just pull the Ryagan back in one turn. Will produce a decent amount of rain in that turn that you know will all find value as well. So at the moment, may have one less card, maybe 5 points down, but is in a pretty decent spot here. And now Tailbot is wondering what he wants to do, because that coup is looking a little bit sad.
It's looking rather tragic, yes, but I have a feeling with this Freya's Blessing we're going to feel a lot better because we're going to see another little half-ru. Oh my dear goodness. There's another 10 points on the board. We make the Assimilate cards tick twice each. That's 54 points already with 2 cards left in hand. But the coup will be a rather tragic one. I think it's going to do about a point or 2 of damage there, depending on the amount of armor on our defender. And AKELA now having to decide, what are we picking?
Yeah, AKELA going down that line right now could take something different, but doesn't necessarily need to grab the Ryogun right here because he's got guaranteed more than enough rain. Goes for the maximum rain value instead, because ultimately if you just take the 4 provision unit, you spawn 6 turns of rain, which is 12 points of damage before the 12 points of engine boost that you are going to give to that messenger. So there is more than enough here to make that bride grab a Sigdrifa. We see on the other side, Tailbot has the ability to produce a lot of rain, but doesn't have the carryover or the follow-through for it. Decided to take the pure value from the 10-point half-ru instead of grabbing his own messenger into this point in the round, because it does end up being more points.
I mean, the messenger is a lot of points. I'm curious to see why Tailbot did not commit his coup a little bit earlier in round 2, as it is now an unfortunate brick in his hand and it's really not going to play for any points here. Again, maybe 1 point of damage on that defender. Looking rather tragic. I would have liked to see a little bit more point slam on the Joachim, but I guess that's not an option you can go for, especially when Joachim pulls out a random card from your deck and it could end up being a little bit too early for that. I'm very curious to see this point swing though. We're going to see the leader ability coming out. That is, 10 turns of rain, 20 points of damage, another 20 with the Messenger of the Sea. That's almost 40-point swing with 4 points of Pride of the Sea, 8 points of Ryogun. That's 67 points for AKELA.
Wow, from 17 down to 37 up in a single swing here. And this is why this rain list is so scary, but it is now through. Wow. Each player, of course, has a match stake, but wow, they are not holding back at all. And he does, in fact, take the Skelligalist here, because while he may be 2-0 down, the power shift does then go to the other player, because he now can choose which deck he takes each coin on, knowing exactly what he is going to queue into. So we now see that Battle Trance list on blue for Tailbot and AKELA, trying for the 3-0 against the legendary Tailbot.
Yes, this is anybody's game. Like you say, Tailbot now having total control over the coins on which he wants to take every single deck against AKELA's. He starts off with blue coin. Again, he has access to his discard package. We have the Mask of Ouroboros ready to go with Karl. We start off with Darren, a card that has recently made its way into the meta. Quite a nice one at that. It takes a card and directly puts it into the graveyard. He doesn't go for Morkvark, interestingly enough. He goes for the Crow Mother, and that's normally an option people take if they don't have access to Morkvark, so an interesting one at that.
Yeah, being able to put the Crow Mother into the graveyard is actually quite nice, because of course it is just effectively developing some carryover and doesn't mess around there. Full tempo swing, commits Giga Scorpion, which is one of his very few pieces of direct damage here, to turn the Hammer Dryad engine off quickly. That is Tailbot saying, I do not want to fight you point-wise in this round. I am not going to let that engine establish.
Yes, and we see AKELA already going into Valve, going for the Isengrim's Council Tutor. That is quite a bit of a gamble there, as Isengrim's Council gives you quite a few options. You don't have direct access to cards like that of Call of the Forest. That could give Tailbot an idea of what's in AKELA's hand, as his hand isn't too great in all honesty. He has Gord, Gezraz, as well as Ithne in her first form. None of those cards you really want in your hand round 1 per se.
No, I completely agree. While they're great cards, they're typically cards you would ideally mulligan, and may leave him in a position, as you say, where perhaps he can't really mulligan that Gord now. He isn't the Philavandrel version after all, so he isn't going to want to, he's not going to have access to a second one with Philavandrel. He has Gezras. So we see Tailbot committing the Coral now, as well as that Stratagem, and just starting to plough those points onto the board with the threat of Coral.
Yes, and Tailbot also has an entirely different list, by the way. This is a Battle Trance list. It is not that of AKELA, so you don't necessarily want a very long round. You can actually just point slam into a short round, making use of the Alchemy synergy and the Crow Clan Preachers. Right now, Tailbot's in a good position here. He still has a lot of cards he can play here if he wants to make sure he gets round control. And that Sunset Wanderer also will play for quite a bit of tempo, even if it has to come out in round 1.
Yeah, there is that. There's definitely that possibility here. He's not too far ahead in this situation, but does have multiple choices. The fact that the Sunset Wanderers is so far over to the left for Tailbot because of the discard package is very, very nice here, and he can commit. He doesn't. Instead, he says, you know what? I'm off. Let's make you make the decision here. Interesting choice from Tailbot. Plays the cards, develops the carryover, and just says, I'm out.
Yes, Tailbot going out of the round within 7 cards. Now, question is, does AKELA have enough here to actually get out in one turn? He likely does. Let's see.
And I like this.
The Circle of Life.
Yeah, the Circle of Life over the Orb, and I like this. I have a feeling he's going to kill a Crow here. No, he doesn't. He needed the extra points. Could have killed a Crow and protected the Gezras. But it wouldn't have been enough. He would have been one short and drawn there, having to use a final leader charge. If he'd been able to put those extra points onto the Gezras, could have been really nice, albeit with the fear of the potential heat wave on it anyway. Perhaps he decided just to go for the raw value.
Yes, I mean, he had to decide whether he wanted another point in this turn or maybe the next round, because obviously if it hit Ethne in her force form, it would have disappeared in the second. One of the bad things about having Ethne in your round 1 hand, that is.
Definitely, but he does dodge that and isn't mulliganing away those stronger cards. In fact, is mulliganing into stronger cards here, as we see Tailbot gets rid of the Morkvarg for now. No burner in hand for him. Doesn't want to hold it, and AKELA is going in. I have seen the power that Nature's Gift can have trying to go for the 2-0, and let's be honest, that hand from AKELA certainly has the power to do just that.
You know what, I love this play from AKELA because he has the option of simply passing at some point and Gezras just ticking away, giving him a lot of points every turn. Now, Tailbot, of course, does have Heatwave, but he has to choose wisely how he wants to spend it. If he uses it on Gezras in round 2, he doesn't have a lot of options when a short round 3 might come and Gord slams onto the board. So, Tailbot now having to decide how he wants to approach this round. There are some threats that need to be addressed, and right now he is sitting on everything he needs to go into a long bleed, and he has to decide whether he's committing, and that's exactly what he does, playing Geddy right off the bat round 2.
Now that is a big commitment, and leaders as well. So he had another card he could have played here instead of doing that, so he could have played a second card. So he's kept himself ahead, but he's kept himself ahead above the threshold where a pass is necessary. Both players could still have played another card here. So Tailbot just saying, no, I'm not going to let you be ahead of me at any point here. But that feels like it was a little bit earlier than necessary, perhaps, on Tailbot's behalf. But AKELA still plays another card, 2-7 here. And we see Tailbot not proccing the scenario. Is AKELA going to say, actually... Yeah, he does. I'm not surprised to see that pass at all there from AKELA. Gedineth over the course of a long round is so scary. Absolutely terrifying how many points it can go for. And we see the Truffle dropped as well, leaving both players on 7 cards. Effectively carryover, putting a strong card in the graveyard, a slightly boosted version. And of course, Truffle now stays on the board, but that was very expensive for Tailbot. A lot of his long round engine value removed at the top end of a bleed that traded for Ethne.
Yes, that was very odd of Tailbot, but he essentially said, no, this isn't happening. I'll give you what you want and we can move on from here. But very odd, as this specific Scalagalus really does rely on this alchemy synergy with the Crow Clan Preachers. We now have access to 1 currently in hand. It will be interesting to see if Tailbot can actually pull this off now, as AKELA is in the perfect position with a long round. That's exactly what he wants to begin with. He has all the cards he needs, hasn't yet used Simlas even, still has access to Bountiful Harvest from his deck as well.
He does. Now, the carryover, of course, from the Sunset Wanderer is still going, has missed Burner and does still have effectively a 4-point brick in his hand there from that, but has been building that up quite nicely. Over the course of a long round as well, of course, that Fukusha does now have the option of an 8-point little Hafru that will give 6 turns of rain. So there are some pretty strong options for the long round here still for Tailbot, but certainly has not drawn perfectly as he would like, perhaps. I suppose only really missing the Burner here, so it isn't too bad for him, but that 4p brick in hand, maybe that will come down to being the difference.
It could very well be. And AKELA now having lost Say as well greatly benefits him if he wants to keep Gord untouched. I have a feeling that Heatwave might come down onto Gezras, and Tailbot will likely keep it in hand for that exact reason. We see one Crow Clan Preacher being dropped onto the board, a rather sad one that does not survive very long. It disappears as is necessary because these cards grow quite large in an alchemy deck. That is something you need to get rid of the moment it hits the board, or else it just runs away with points.
Yeah, the risk of bonded value on them can always be quite scary, so you do need to do your best to get rid of that. We do see the Crow Mother carryover coming into play there, though, and doesn't find the Burner, which is would have been what he was banking on there. The Sunset Wanderer bringing that Burner out, finds himself instead of Mardrome, so there is some alchemy synergy, of course, there if he does end up with any damaged units that stick. A couple of units in the front row, both of his cards that have jumped there without his choosing, also, of course, providing that Gezras some value here, but point to point, he's quite far ahead so far.
That's for sure, he is. I see him hovering over Heatwave, but I'm going to pretend I didn't see that. Probably just my eyes playing tricks on me. Now, he does play that 4-point skirmisher, not a lot of points, definitely not ideal, never something you want to play directly from hand.
No, not at all, but ultimately, he's sort of in a waiting turn right now, really. Doesn't need to commit any of those other key pieces initially. I think the next turn, if he's going for maximum value in terms of rain, probably is the Fukusha turn, if he's going down that route instead, although does still have the option to Fukusha into Coral, which is something he could have done there, I think. He could have Fukusha'd into Coral to get rid of the unit in hand instead, and taken a slightly different path. I don't believe it was doomed, so that is something perhaps he could have done, and has elected not to, perhaps in favour of additional rain value instead.
You are correct. He could have gone for Coral and perhaps even have drawn into something like Burner with that, giving it extra points at the end of the day. But instead he goes for the Hafru. He gets a lot of rain on that back row. And I don't think AKELA is too bothered, in all honesty. Right now, it's looking rather good for him. Those Treants are just filling up unnecessary space when you have a deck of this proportion. I mean, those Whisperers will just keep on spamming more copies of themselves at the end of the day, and all of the other nature cards will just make more Treants. Often I find myself having a range row that is full, and Gezras never makes his appearance. So this does not look too horrible for AKELA given the situation.
No, although the rain, of course, could double snipe those trees. There aren't actually that many units left available here for AKELA that aren't spawned, so it could end up filling the front row. Every time I try and play Whisperers in this list, the trees jump onto the same row, so we will see if it happens here. And I love the offensive Mardrome. Was about to say it should be a consideration to remove that, because the amount of points that would have played for is quite scary. So really nice to see that taken as an option here. Useful for Tailbot, and we do see now all of those units are going to stick, of course, on the back row.
Yes, now we do see that Gezras glowing red as the sun. He can be played now. He won't survive most likely, but he can definitely be played on that melee row. He will go into the back row and he will boost 5 units. Now, this... I wonder what the play here is on Tailbot's end.
Yeah, Tailbot here has yet to drop the Hafru Singer onto the board, will not really find a great deal of heal value for it, which may be the reason he has done this now. Clicks that, gives him a damaged unit to grab some synergy from the Mushy Truffle as well, and get some value out of that Hafru a couple more times at least in this. He's got to take max value now, I think. He has to just go with it, because while he is ahead, there are so many points left on the other side.
Yes, and we see AKELA going there for the Forest Protector into Bountiful Harvest. He gets a nice, well-placed Treant on the Range Rover for later Gezras. And he also has a Sorceress. He does not boost her, which is interesting, as she might take some rain damage and then be rather useless. But he has time. He has time to give her his leader charge. No, he doesn't. I take that back. Better not have given her that charge, as the Giga Scorpion decoction played for 6 points at the end of the day.
It did indeed, and the rain value there also removing another unit, so 2 units removed in that situation there. But we see the Gezras come down. Would not be stunned to see the Gezras disappear as quickly as he appeared, and we do see that from Tailbot. This is going to be close. That Gord, if I am not mistaken right now, is probably up at his maximum value, +7 boost. So this is going to be really tight here, actually.
Yeah, you are correct here. AKELA now having the Nature's Rebuke. He can't get rid of that half-roof Singer anymore. Tailbot boosted it quite nicely, actually, preventing that from going. This is going to be rather close. You are correct. You are correct. So he does use his leader charge. He uses Dunka. Alright, and goes for the Nature's Rebuke. Now, he needs a few points to catch up here. Is it going to be enough? That's the question.
It's going to be close. There is no damage benefit from the Alchemy, so it's not going to spawn from the Singer. This is really tight. It is 8. He needs 19 to win, so he needs 17 from this. Oh my lord, it's just enough by 1. It is enough by 1. The Gord wasn't at max, but AKELA taking it there.